He was an inmate on the verge of parole. She was the only light in his life. But when he opened that door and saw her on her knees in front of the man who controlled his sentence, he didn't hesitate, and within moments, 2 people were dead. But what investigators would find later made this more than just a crime of passion. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe if you love true stories with twists no one saw coming. It was supposed to be a routine check-in. A parole officer, Davis Martinez, 33, was conducting a standard visit to a registered sex offender's residence in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Emmanuel Edward Sewell, 54, had been released from prison in 2021 and was under supervision. Martinez had been on the job for 6 years, known for his dedication and professionalism. He had no reason to suspect that this visit would be any different, but when he failed to report back, concerns grew. Officers were dispatched to Sewell's apartment where they discovered Martinez's body, wrapped in plastic and hidden under a bed. Sewell was arrested in West Virginia shortly after. The motive behind the murder remains unclear, but the brutality of the act shocked the community. This case highlights the dangers parole officers face and raises questions about the supervision of released offenders. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Marcus Dalton was 36 years old, serving an 8-year sentence for aggravated assault. Clean record before the charge, no gang ties, no infractions inside. He was the kind of inmate who kept to himself, read legal books in the library, and didn't speak unless spoken to. Angela Dalton, 33, a school teacher, faith-based. For 5 of those years, she made the 2-hour drive every Saturday, without fail. She never missed a visit. She always wore the same necklace. She always smiled the same smile. And then, there was Warden Paul Hensley, 52, a decorated career in corrections. To some, he was a reformer. To others, he was a ruler. And at Jackson Ridge Correctional, his word was law. No one questioned his methods because those who didn't stay long. Now here's what we know. 2 bodies, found in the parole review office. Angela Dalton, stabbed 3 times. Warden Hensley, shot in the chest, point blank. The surveillance footage, grainy, distorted, but it showed one thing clearly: Marcus Dalton walking into the room and then walking out, covered in blood. But that's where the certainty ends, because what investigators found, or didn't find, began raising questions no one seemed ready to answer. Why was there no audio from the surveillance system? Why did Angela have clearance to be in that room, alone, with Warden Hensley? And perhaps most disturbing of all, why did the prison's internal report list the time of death an hour before Marcus was even signed out of his cell? Was Marcus set up? Or did something inside him break the moment he saw what no husband ever should? And if so, why was the prison administration so quick to seal the logs from that day? There are 2 truths in this case. 2 people died, and someone, maybe more than one person, wants the world to believe it was just a crime of passion. But every thread we pull keeps unraveling that story. Marcus Dalton was born and raised just outside Lafayette, Louisiana. The youngest of 4 brothers, all raised by a single mother after their father disappeared one night and never came back. Money was tight, but loyalty ran deep. And Marcus? He was the protector. If someone messed with his brother, Marcus handled it. If someone disrespected his mother, Marcus made sure they didn't do it again. By 17, he already had 2 assault charges, both dismissed. By 21, a near-fatal bar fight put him on probation. And by 28, it caught up with him for real. A roadside altercation with an off-duty officer ended with a shattered jaw and an 8-year sentence for aggravated assault. He met Angela just before the sentence came down. She was a student teacher at the local high school. Sweet, quiet, the kind of girl who still brought cupcakes to church socials. No one could quite understand how someone like her ended up with someone like Marcus. But she stayed. She visited every week. She mailed handwritten letters with lipstick marks on the envelope, kept a framed photo of them on her classroom desk, and told anyone who asked that love was love, no matter where he lived. But online, she was someone else entirely. Her Instagram, under a different name, painted a different picture. Flashy outfits, designer purses, posts tagged from luxury lounges in Atlanta, captions like, "Sometimes you have to lie to live." And another, just weeks before the murders, "Debt is just another word for leverage." Angela had layers, and none of them matched the image she gave Marcus. Then there was Warden Paul Hensley, decorated Army Ranger, Bronze Star. Took over Jackson Ridge Correctional in 2015 after a riot left 3 inmates dead and 2 officers hospitalized. Cleaned house, installed new surveillance, restructured inmate privileges, rewrote the parole review process from top to bottom. His motto? Respect earns freedom, weakness earns time. To his staff, he was charming, methodical, articulate. But to the inmates, he was feared. Every decision went through him. Every parole review had his signature. And when complaints were filed about intimidation, favoritism, even harassment, they were investigated quietly and dismissed just as quietly. Several officers resigned under vague circumstances. One former nurse said, "He never raised his voice, he didn't have to. He knew where your pressure points were, metaphorically and literally." And through it all, Angela Dalton kept showing up. But not just for Marcus. She had private meetings with Warden Hensley, supposedly to discuss Marcus's progress. No record of what was said, no video footage of those meetings, just timestamps on visitor logs. And increasingly, those logs started showing she was cleared into restricted areas, sometimes without Marcus even being present. In retrospect, there were signs. But no one wanted to believe what Angela was capable of. Not the staff, not Marcus, and certainly not the people who saw her as the perfect wife waiting for her man to come home. But beneath the lipstick and Bible verses, something else was unfolding. Something no one expected. And by the time anyone realized, it was already too late. It was supposed to be a regular day at Jackson Ridge Correctional. Marcus Dalton had been assigned to laundry, his usual Tuesday work detail. He clocked in, folded towels, sorted uniforms, kept his head down. But at 10:47 a.m. something changed. A shift log shows he was suddenly pulled from his station and told he had a time-sensitive appointment. No details. No reason given. Just a verbal note from one of the guards on Hensley's rotation. The unusual part? He wasn't scheduled for visitation that day. A few inmates later told investigators that Marcus looked off. One said he kept checking the clock. Another described him as too calm, like he already knew something. At 11:09 a.m., Marcus Dalton walked down Corridor 6, a restricted hallway, escorted by a junior officer who left him at the end of the block. Unusual procedure, but not unheard of when the warden made special exceptions. 11 minutes later, that same hallway would be sealed with crime scene tape. Now here's what we know about what happened inside room 32B. There's no audio, only footage from one overhead camera, grainy, glitching in and out. At 11:13 a.m., Marcus enters. He pauses. The door closes behind him. What he sees, only he knows for sure. But what investigators piece together from the aftermath is this. Angela is standing close to Warden Hensley. Too close. She's not dressed for a normal visit, tight red blouse, no visitor badge, no purse. Warden Hensley is leaning against the desk, shirt untucked, belt undone. In the footage, Marcus stands still for 5 full seconds, then moves fast. He lunges forward, swinging his arm in a wild arc. What he's holding, a makeshift blade roughly filed from scrap metal and wrapped in cloth, was never found during previous searches. The first blow hits Hensley in the chest. The next 16 come in rapid succession. Angela screams, tries to grab Marcus's arm. The camera glitches, then catches her stumbling backward, hand pressed to her abdomen. She collapses near the far wall. Marcus backs away, breathing heavily, drops the weapon. Then, in one final chilling moment, he steps over Hensley's body, leans in, and says something. The footage has no sound, but Angela, still barely conscious, would later whisper the words to a medic before losing consciousness. 3 words. He said, "You knew." And then she stopped breathing. Marcus didn't run. When guards stormed the room at 11:19 a.m., he was sitting in the chair, hands on his knees, covered in blood. He looked up, calm, and said, "It's done." But what the prison surveillance didn't show was what Marcus whispered right before the attack. And that missing moment, just 5 seconds, would become the centerpiece of a mystery far more complicated than anyone imagined. By noon, Jackson Ridge was in lockdown. State police, county deputies, internal affairs. They all flooded the facility within the hour. Reporters followed close behind, broadcasting from just outside the razor wire fence. The headline hit national media within minutes. Inmate kills warden and wife during prison visit. By 2:17 p.m., Warden Paul Hensley was pronounced dead. Angela Dalton was transported to St. Mary's Medical Center with massive internal bleeding. She coded on the table at 5:42 p.m. 2 lives, gone. 1 man in custody, covered in their blood, and he confessed. Marcus Dalton didn't flinch during questioning. He gave a full statement within 24 hours, said he saw the truth and couldn't let them get away with it. His voice was calm, measured, almost cold. But something didn't sit right. Investigators started noticing inconsistencies. Marcus claimed he didn't know about the affair until that very moment. But his phrasing in the footage, "You knew," and the ease with which he entered that restricted office without hesitation, that raised flags. So they dug deeper. Phone records revealed Marcus had placed a number of coded calls to a cousin on the outside. When traced, those calls corresponded to days when Angela had missed visits. Days she later appeared, logged not under Marcus's name, but under a generic administrative exception. Emails tied to the prison's internal log system had been altered, times changed, dates erased, but the server still kept backups. What they found was undeniable. Angela had been cleared to visit Warden Hensley, alone, 6 times over the last 7 weeks. Each visit recorded without video, each marked as private review conference. Angela was not listed as an attorney, nor clergy, nor any role that allowed for privacy. So why was she allowed behind locked doors? The bigger question came next. Because it wasn't just an affair. Investigators uncovered encrypted texts from Angela's second phone, one Marcus never knew about. Messages between her and Hensley hinted at something more than just secrecy. They were planning something. "Once parole hits, we move. I already got the clearance. He still thinks I'm doing this for him. He won't see it coming. He never really saw anything." They weren't just cheating. They were setting Marcus up. What for? That part was unclear. But financial records later revealed Angela had recently opened 2 new accounts. One under her name, one under the alias E.D. Hunt, a name Warden Hensley had used before in offshore correspondence. They had been wiring small amounts, laundering money, investigators believed, through property sales and nonprofit shell accounts linked to prison development grants. But even with all that, not everyone bought the setup theory. One guard insisted Marcus had always hated Hensley, said he spoke about him like a dog, and once said, "He thinks he controls everything. One day someone's gonna end that." Jealous rage? It looked possible, until investigators found Angela's private journal, a thick leather-bound notebook buried in the trunk of her old Corolla, left at the prison lot. Inside, dozens of handwritten entries, some about Marcus, most about Hensley. And one entry stood out, dated just 3 days before the murders. "He says we'll be gone before the ink dries. But I know what this is now. I was never part of the plan, just a means to get leverage. I think Marcus is the only one who ever actually loved me, and I'm about to get both men killed." By the time investigators unraveled what really happened at Jackson Ridge, it was no longer just about a double homicide. It was about a system that had been protecting a predator. Angela Dalton had been manipulated, pressured, blackmailed. Private records found in Warden Paul Hensley's office, hidden in a locked drawer behind a false panel, painted a disturbing pattern. Angela had tried to distance herself, but Hensley wasn't just holding her heart hostage. He was holding Marcus's freedom. He told her more than once that if she didn't cooperate, Marcus's parole would mysteriously fall through. Her journal called it emotional extortion, masked as mercy. It didn't stop there. Inside Angela's apartment, investigators found a letter, handwritten, addressed to the governor of Georgia, unsigned, never mailed. This man, Warden Hensley, is using his position to manipulate women tied to the inmates he controls, including me. I'm scared, but I want to do the right thing. She never sent it, because days later, she was dead. And then a phone, a contraband burner device, recovered from the cell of another inmate, a man serving 15 years for robbery. Hidden behind a cracked toilet panel, the phone contained 6 audio recordings, unmarked, nearly corrupted. But what technicians salvaged was enough. Warden Hensley, clear as day. In one clip, he can be heard saying, "You don't want your boy going back to Tier D, do you? Then I suggest your girl keeps showing up, smiling." Another file, a woman's voice crying, possibly Angela's. And then, silence. This wasn't just abuse of power. It was systematic manipulation, targeted, coordinated. Angela had been one of several. She tried to speak up. She even met with a former staff counselor, off the record, 3 days before her death. That meeting wasn't documented in prison logs, but in a sworn affidavit later submitted to the court, the counselor claimed she was terrified. She said, "If I disappear, it wasn't an accident." And then she left. Marcus Dalton's trial began 6 months later. He didn't request a reduced sentence. He didn't claim self-defense. He pled guilty to both murders. But before sentencing, he asked to address the court. The room was silent. Cameras were not allowed. But his words echoed through transcripts and reporters' notes. "I didn't kill out of anger. I didn't kill because of an affair. I killed to stop the man who was destroying my family, one visit at a time. I asked for justice. No one listened, so I delivered it." The courtroom was divided. Some saw him as a murderer, others, something more complex. But then came the autopsy report, and it changed everything. The trial was almost over. Testimonies had been heard, evidence entered. The prosecution, the defense, the jury, all prepared for what seemed to be a straightforward sentencing. Then the autopsy report was unsealed. Angela Dalton had been 8 weeks pregnant. That alone stunned the courtroom. But it was the DNA test that followed that turned everything upside down. The child wasn't Marcus's. It was Warden Paul Hensley's. The silence that followed that revelation was described by one courtroom observer as so thick even the judge didn't breathe. Marcus didn't speak at first. He just lowered his head. But when the judge asked if he had anything else to say before sentencing, he stood, hands shackled, voice shaking, but clear. "She was my everything. I waited 7 years to come home to her, wrote her every night, memorized her laugh through collect calls, and he took her. Took my freedom, took her loyalty, took her body. And then he made her carry the weight of his lies. I didn't know she was pregnant. And now, I'll never unsee what I walked in on." That was the day the world stopped making sense. The judge sentenced Marcus to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. But outside those courtroom walls, the conversation had already shifted. Some said justice was served, others weren't so sure. Online forums lit up. News outlets called him the betrayed inmate. Support groups sent letters. A petition for clemency gained over 80,000 signatures in under a week. And still, some called him a monster. Said no affair, no betrayal, no backroom scandal justified what he did. But for many, the story felt personal. Too personal. A man locked away for nearly a decade, a wife caught between devotion and coercion, a prison system that protected predators in uniform, and a child that would never be born. The final scene? Marcus Dalton sits across from a reporter in a recorded interview, his first and only since the trial. Orange jumpsuit, unshaven, eyes hollow but focused. The camera zooms in as he leans forward. I didn't go there to kill, but when I saw what I saw, everything inside me broke. I never expected to see her like that. And when I realized what he had done to her, what he was still doing, I couldn't let it go on. He pauses. Was it right? I don't know, but it was the only way it was ever going to stop. So we're left with a question, a hard one. Is it ever justifiable to kill out of betrayal? How far would you go to protect your family from humiliation? So what do you think? Was Marcus Dalton a cold-blooded killer, someone who crossed a line no one should ever cross? Or was he a broken man, cornered by a system that failed him, betrayed by the people he trusted most? It's a question that still divides opinion. But if you thought this story was disturbing, just wait. Next week, we'll bring you a case even darker. A preacher who married his own daughter and tried to erase anyone who found out. It's a story that will challenge everything you think you know about family, faith, and secrets buried deep. So don't miss it. Subscribe now and click the bell so you never miss a case. And while you're here, let us know in the comments. Do you believe Marcus deserved life behind bar and or mercy? We can't wait to hear from you.